One of the shocks I had, and I've been researching this issue now for 14 years, first as a professor of chemistry at St. Lawrence University in Canton, New York, and more recently after retiring as the executive director of the Fluoride Action Network. For 14 years I've researched the literature on this, and one of the surprises has been how poor the evidence is that it actually works, that actually swallowing fluoride reduces tooth decay. The evidence is very weak. In fact, if you look at these graphs here, these show tooth decay coming down in 12-year-olds. This is from the World Health Organization data. The tooth decay is coming down in 12-year-olds from the 60s through to the present day. And there's data on this graph for about 16 or 17 countries. Only 4 of those countries are fluoridated. The others are not fluoridated. And in fact, the majority of countries in the world are not fluoridated. And so there's practically no difference. You can't see a difference between the decline in tooth decay in these countries, whether they're fluoridated or not. And similarly, if you compare the tooth decay in states in the United States, there's practically no difference in tooth decay whether the state has most of its population drinking fluoridated water or a small percentage drinking fluoridated water. The same applies to counties in New York State. And the largest survey ever done in the United States, where they looked at 84,000 children in 39 different communities, in fact for children who'd lived all their lives in a fluoridated community, all their lives in a non-fluoridated community, and children who'd lived some of their time in either community, they found practically no difference in tooth decay in the permanent teeth. The average difference in tooth decay was less than 1 tooth surface out of about 100 tooth surfaces in a child's mouth. Now that's an average for 5 to 17-year-olds. The average saving in tooth decay was 0.6 of 1 tooth surface. And that is the largest survey that's ever been done in the United States. And subsequent surveys in Australia have found even less saving in tooth decay. And when you then begin to hear about the downside, when you begin to hear about the risks, the health risks involved, it's hard to see how any rational person can justify risk to the brain, risk to the bone, risk to the thyroid, risk to the pineal gland, and risk to the teeth themselves to save, at best, 0.6 of 1 tooth surface. One of the sloppy bits of thinking which has dogged the discussion of fluoridation for over 60 years is the deliberate confusion between concentration and dose. Now, the promoters of fluoridation make a big point of how well engineers can control the concentration of the fluoride that they put into the drinking water at the public waterworks. They probably can, most of the time. There are accidents, but most of the time they can control the concentration. What they can't control, and nobody can control, is the dose, because you can't control how much water people drink. And some people drink a huge amount of water. Workers working outside in a hot climate drink a lot of water. People who repair roofs in a hot climate drink a lot of water. Athletes drink a lot of water. Diabetics drink a lot of water. People with poor kidney function often drink a lot of water. You can't control the dose, because you can't control how much water people drink, and you can't control how much fluoride they get from other sources, which have been increasing over the years. We get fluoride from dental products, from pesticide residues, and so on. So let's be very clear about this. Somebody that drinks 1 liter of water at 1 part per million will get 1 milligram of fluoride. Somebody who drinks 2 liters will get 2 milligrams. And someone who drinks 3 liters will get 3 milligrams. And the thing that hurts you is the number of milligrams you get each day. And that's what we call the dose. And actually, it's a little bit more complicated than that, because now you have to consider body weight. If you have a large adult, the amount of poison that you're getting per kilogram of body weight is much, much smaller than a small baby with a low body weight. Supposing they both get 1 milligram, Well, the dosage for the adult will be 1 milligram divided by 70 kilograms. The dosage for the baby would be 1 milligram divided by, on average, 7 kilograms. So given an equal amount of the fluoride, given an equal dose in milligrams per day, the baby is going to get approximately 10 times more impact in terms of the concentration per body weight. So by focusing on concentration, the promoters miss the difference between concentration and dose, the difference between milligrams per liter, which they can control, and the milligrams per day, which they can't. And they also miss the second important argument, that the same quantity has a larger impact on a smaller body weight, on a baby's body weight, than an adult. And I think everybody knows that. Everybody knows that when they see the safe dose of aspirin, say, on a bottle for an adult, that's not going to be the same safe dose for a baby. It has to be reduced, and the way we reduce it is by comparing the body weights. Let us begin with the teeth. One of the things that they knew in 1931 was that if you put fluoride in the water, the number of children with dental fluorosis, which is those white specks, white markings on the teeth, which as it gets more severe covers more and more of the surface of the teeth, very mild up to 25% of the tooth surface, mild up to 50%, moderate 100%, and severe 100% of the tooth surface impacted, discolored, and pitting. They thought in 1931, and again in 1945 when they started the trials, that only about 10% of the kids would get dental fluorosis. And in its very mild form, which they thought would hardly be noticeable, and they thought that was a trade-off for reducing tooth decay. Now it turns out that in the United States, 32% of American children now have dental fluorosis, including kids in non-fluoridated areas. Our kids are getting too much fluoride, not too little fluoride. We should be reducing the amount of fluoride that they get, not putting it in the water and jacking it up. Now, in addition to those, this is, by the way, the 32% figure comes from the Center of Disease Control itself, which is a big promoter of fluoridation. So there's no question that these figures are not overestimated. 32%, and not all of it is very mild. Some of it's mild, some of it's moderate, some of it's even severe. Now, the gamble that was taken in 1950 when the US Public Health Service endorsed fluoridation, and incidentally, every Surgeon General since that day has been waxing lyrical about the wonders of fluoridation, and all the medical and dental associations followed suit as soon as the US government endorsed fluoridation in 1950. But the awful story is that in 1950, there was not one of the trials had been completed, so they hadn't got scientific evidence on efficacy. And secondly, they had no published comprehensive health study, certainly no long-term health study of what this was going to do to the population. None. And so this was a gamble. And the gamble, what I call the fluoridation gamble, we have 2 chapters of this in a book I've just written called The Case Against Fluoride. The fluoridation gamble is that fluoride could be damaging the growing tooth